Twitter wants to make it very difficult for you to let people out of your canoe. Uber self-driving cars would be better off taking driving advice from my dad, and find out why you are spreading fake news. All that and a whole lot more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1736, recorded Thursday, March 30th, 2017.
Welcome to Tech News Today. This is the show where we tell you what you need to know about technology. I'm Megan Maroney.
I'm Jason Howell. We tell you what you need to know, and we wag our fingers at you when we do it. Or our finger. Mm-hmm. One or two fingers, I'm not sure.
We wag our fingers like this.
And then we start dancing. Top story today, Palmer Luckey, the co-founder of Oculus and pretty much the guy behind the Oculus Rift's development from conception, is apparently leaving Facebook after 3 years with the company post-acquisition. Friday will be his last day as a Facebookie. I don't know if they're called that, but it sounds nice. Sounds like it works.
Facebooker.
Okay, I kind of like Facebookie, but okay, fine, Facebooker. So that'll be the last day that he walks into Facebook and clocks in and says hey to his friends as he walks by their office and sits down and stares at his computer. And who knows what he does there, because he hasn't really been very public in the past year.
Facebookitarian?
Facebookitarian, that could actually be somewhat applicable, actually. So he had a super kind of public persona for the years leading up to last year, through the development, the creation of Oculus being acquired by Facebook. He was very involved with the Oculus Connect developer conference for a few years. And then last year, just kind of, you stopped hearing anything about him. And what you did hear was just a lot of kind of drama. There was some drama around being heavily criticized by many for contributing $10,000 to a far-right political group called Nimble America that was behind a bunch of anti-Hillary Clinton memes. And there was, were questions about whether he actually directly made those memes. He said in his final Facebook post that he didn't, but that he was sorry, that he donated that money there. And, so that kind of turned the public against him at a very highly political time. So you didn't hear much about him beyond that. And then there was the ZeniMax Facebook trial battle, whatever you want to call it, and Luckey, which apparently, was ruled in favor of Facebook ultimately, but Luckey was kind of still on the hook to pay a certain amount of money, I think $500 million to ZeniMax. So the few times that we've seen him in the past year, it's been embroiled in controversy. And so who knows, no one's saying whether Facebook let him go or whether he decided to leave.
Yeah, they say they just don't comment on these types of things. And, I don't know how to feel. Like, yes, he donated money to an organization which many find distasteful. When I look at someone like Travis Kalanick from Uber apologizing, I need to change. It's very different. He's 41 years old versus Palmer Luckey. He's 24. Maybe he will change. Mark Zuckerberg had a hard time in the beginning too. Maybe he will change. Maybe he won't. Maybe he'll go on to do something amazing, and maybe he won't. So he doesn't, as we were discussing before, he doesn't really have to do anything else. He has enough money to just hang out in virtual reality for the rest of his life. And so I don't know. I guess I don't know what to say about this. I think that I wonder if it really says something about the future of virtual reality. Is it, it came on very strong and now people are like, meh.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I don't know how much this particular situation affects VR at large. No doubt Palmer Luckey is one of the main faces behind VR, or at least has been in the past few years, because of the Oculus Rift, because of Oculus, and then, of course, being acquired by Facebook. It's interesting that possibly the biggest face in this technology sphere, this part of the technology sphere will no longer have any involvement with the technology that he actually created. That's kind of a big deal, especially if it continues to be as big as Zuckerberg and Facebook. Hope that it will be 5-10 years down the line. But then at the same time, Tim Stevens from CNET tweeted out that he noticed that this is like within days. I think the 3-year anniversary of the announcement of the acquisition was like the beginning of this week. It's very possible that, Palmer Luckey was on for a 3-year contract with the acquisition. This happens all the time, right? A company is acquired. The people who come over with the company are required to stay for a certain contractual length. And then at that point, they're free to move on and do something else. He made his money from Oculus. It belongs to Facebook now. Is he going to be an employee of Facebook, or is he going to branch out and do his own thing, whatever that is, after a period of cooling off so that, maybe his public his public persona can kind of have a cool off period in light of all of this kind of controversy around him.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I'm sort of parsing my words here, because I do think that it's very normal for a founder to stay a little while, a founder whose company gets bought by a giant company, stay a little while and then move on. That is very normal. We love a story. We love to take people from heights and bring them down. And none of that is to say that I support any of the things in this far-right organization that he was donating money to. I'm just saying, who knows? Like we might be just creating this story because it's a good one to tell. Or just, like you said, it could be what Tim Stevens said. It's just this was going to happen anyway. And anything that we're trying to create around it was just a story for our own entertainment.
Yes, and now it's a story for our own virtual entertainment, hopefully, if VR continues to be anything.
Well, I'll look forward to the film.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure it'll happen. Yeah. I'm sure Oliver Stone presents Palmer Luckey. Actually, someone in the chat room threw out FacePalmed.
That's good.
Could totally be the title of that movie.
Well, we are getting more information on last weekend's high-speed crash involving a self-driving Uber. Business Insider says that according to the police report, the driverless Uber was hit while traveling through a yellow light. The report, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act, says the autonomous Uber was traveling at 38 miles per hour through a yellow light next to stopped traffic. Eyewitnesses told police that the car, which had 2 Uber test drivers in it, quote, just wanted to beat the light. And I mean, I'm wondering if this means that humans are still better at judging complex situations. There's controversy about, some people are saying one thing, some people are saying the other thing, but we've all been in that situation where it's a yellow light. You have the chance to turn, and it's almost, you don't necessarily, you're making a left. It's the very end of your time to make a left turn across traffic. You see people parked in traffic, and so you think you can go, and then a car, zooms in front of you. So that's what happened. But so you would think the human is like, okay, well, I'm going to drive a little bit slowly because I don't know what's on the other side. And you would think that a self-driving car would already be, would know enough to do that. But I'm just surprised that a self-driving car goes through a yellow light.
Yeah, I know. That's kind of what I walked away from this too, with too. Uber says their cars are programmed to pass through a yellow light if it can maintain the same speed, which tells you that, okay, so if the speed limit's 35, and in this case, I think it was going 34, a mile per hour under the speed limit, if it can maintain 34 through the yellow light, that actually seems kind of fast to me to be blowing through an intersection.
Yeah, well, the speed limit was 40. They were going 38.
Okay, so they slowed down 2 miles per hour. Still, that's pretty fast through an intersection. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a really big intersection. I don't know. But aside from that, I mean, yeah, I think they need to default in this case on the side of caution and realize that there's actually a lot of ambiguity around yellow lights. Yellow lights can mean a lot of things, and they can actually be different lengths. You don't know how long a yellow light is going to be. In some intersections, they're pretty quick, and in some intersections, they're very long. And I don't know how the robot knows the difference between those. So if that's the case, if you can't actually standardize some sort of, if there is no standardization with that, then how can they evaluate absolutely what the risk is versus just kind of being cautious and holding back, slowing down enough, to make that calculation, or just if it just turned yellow, maybe you stop. I don't know.
Yeah, well,
people would probably honk at you though if they're behind you, but still, caution.
I think all these self-driving cars should be taught by my dad, who taught me how to drive. And I still remember this, so many years ago. He said, if there's a yellow light, always stop, because if someone hits you from behind, it's their fault.
Oh. Good. That's I've never heard that one before, but that's practical.
Yeah. So maybe my dad.
And you get a new car, maybe.
Exactly.
Hope you're okay, though. Hope you survive.
Maybe something happens to your neck, but
Oh, yeah. I don't know if that's such sound advice. I understand where he's coming from, though.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Just make sure it's not your fault.
Yeah, there you go. Twitter has been chipping away at what is included within that 140 character limit and announced that usernames in its replies, or in at replies anyways, will no longer count against that character limit. Now, instead of showing at names in line with the tweet, those names will actually display above the tweet itself. You'll see a couple of those names, and if it's more than that, it'll be like name, and more. Tapping that little section with the names allows for an expanded view of who's in on the thread. And then, of course, if you're replying to a thread that has multiple names in there, I think more than just a couple, it allows you to edit those by tapping on it, and then you can check or uncheck them in order to remove them from future tweets. In the canoe, as they call it, the Twitter canoe.
You say that like it's so easy, but it's not easy. It's stupid. It's dumb, Twitter, the way they did it. Because you get this long list of people, and first thing I tried to do was delete them, drag across like you would delete something, but you can't do that. You have to press on them, which someone had to tell me this, and then you have to go through. There's no select all. So let's say you have like 10 people. There's no select all. You have to go, I'm going to unselect. I also don't like change, so that's an issue. And it reminds you that one of those things that's
dollar
like,
bills.
I think of Twitter as like my home. It's like I'll wrap myself in a little blanket and, tweet some things, reply. Yeah. And then all of a sudden they change. It's like, you're not allowed to do this. This is mine. And then I'm reminded that it is not ours, that Jack Dorsey can do whatever he wants. He can change whatever he wants. It doesn't belong to us, and we just have to live there and get used to it.
Well, yeah, the last part especially, we'll get used to it. I'm sure, in a couple of months we'll be more or less used to the method. It's a little bit different. But I mean, there is something to be said for the speed at which you could maneuver Twitter in the old method, which is reply, remove, type, go. And now it's a little bit more fiddly. It requires a little bit more kind of manual pressing and deselecting and whatever. I don't know. Maybe they kind of improve that UX a little bit going forward. But some are also criticizing the fact that the new method removes a little bit of customizability that people have been doing in ordering the names to put the most important name or the person you really want to make sure sees it at the front. And I've never done that. If I'm replying to like a tweet with multiple names, I'm like, I don't got time for that. Reply, move on with my life. But apparently people take the time to do that. And in the new method, there really is none of that. There's no ordering of anything. So
yeah, there's some other changes within direct messages too. Like I have open DMs. Anyone can DM me. But now all of a sudden it asks me if I want to accept them or not. If it's not someone that follows me, it says, do you want to read this or not?
Oh.
And you can just say no, which I thought that was like over UI because I've already said, let them in. I want to see them all. But I guess that if, you couldn't, I mean, I'm not that important. So I can understand if someone would, like a journalist would maybe only want to see DMs from important people or something, so that they could, I don't know. You know how
verified people.
In it's like what Facebook does. If you get a message, a direct message in Facebook from someone who doesn't follow you, it says like this person wants to message you. Do you want to accept it or not? It's that.
Okay.
So, but it's weird because I've already said.
You've already said open it up.
I've already said, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like they need an additional setting in there or something to be like, really? Get it all? Or do you want to approve on a per basis?
And I think that's probably in response to all the criticisms that many, like myself, have made to Twitter that, it's not doing enough against people that are getting abuse. So, I mean, just because you get a lot of abuse doesn't mean, I can see how if you get a lot of abuse and you want to still have open DMs, you could see and just immediately block that person if they said something horrible. Like if the person opens up with like, you're ugly, then you might want to have the access to.
Right.
And of course, it would probably be something much worse than that. But I didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
Well, according to a report from Bloomberg, Amazon really wants you to start buying your Oreos directly from them, bypassing stores like Walmart, Costco, and Target. Jeff Bezos has invited General Mills and other packaged goods makers to Amazon's headquarters to explain why it is better if they sell their stuff directly to the customer through Amazon. Bezos is also trying to convince the food makers to sell their products in bulk in the same way that warehouse chains like Costco have convinced those food makers to do that. Bloomberg says fear might be the motivating factor here, as the big companies know very well that Amazon can create their own products to sell if General Mills doesn't want to go through Amazon. So my big question to you, Jason, is would you eat Amazon brand Oreos? They'd probably be called Amazon brand.
Amazos? Or...
Yeah, Amazos. Great name, by the way. Would you eat Amazos?
I don't know. I mean, so what you're asking is Oreos, you can get those at the grocery store, but because they didn't seal the deal with Amazon, they're not through Amazon, but instead you get Amazonzos instead. No, I probably wouldn't. No, because Oreos are Oreos. It's like when you go to the grocery store and they've got the row of cereals, and then they've got the cereal alikes down at the bottom. So I mean, and I'm not knocking the cereal likes. I think I have a cereal like at home even, but some people won't even go there because you know what? That's not Fruit Loops. You know what I mean? I don't. But hey, Amazon's got a lot of pull in this kind of online marketplace, and I'm sure that it's only going to grow. So maybe at some point they do. I don't think that they out Oreo.
Right. Well, I guess the issue, that wasn't really the big question. The issue is like sounds to me like the same thing they did in the book industry, where they were putting undue pressure on booksellers and it seems like that's what here, General Mills, come to Amazon. We'll tell you how amazing it is, how efficient we are with all these people that we employ and these robots to get these, and so you're going to save so much money to just go right through us. Don't go through Costco. Don't go through Target. Don't go through Walmart.
But why when you're selling those brands, why on earth would you go exclusive with Amazon?
Yeah, I don't know if it's exclusive. Maybe it's more like, no, it's not exclusive, but I think the way that General Mills treats Walmart is different than the way they treat Amazon.
And they cut better deals. They actually have some, or like Costco is a great example where these brands actually package. They have a part of their supply chain that packages specifically for Costco. Hey, do that for Amazon too. That I could totally see. I actually could see Amazon kind of at a point to where that would make a lot of sense. Putting it that way, that makes a lot of sense to me. But it is a lot to ask of a brand to say, all right, all of your manufacturing processes, how you produce all of your food and package it and everything, we need you to do something different for us. But Amazon's got a lot of pull. Yeah. And they've got a wide reach. Yeah. So
it's not, and they're not talking about exclusivity, but just like cutting better deals.
Yeah.
So 5% of grocery shopping is online now. It's only 5%, which I thought would be more, but they say it's going to grow quadruple over the next 4 or 5 years. So.
Yeah, I mean, I buy a lot of things online. Groceries is not really much. I would hardly buy any groceries through Amazon. I just don't do that. It's not part of my routine. But that's not to say that I won't get there, because I remember back in the day, I remember checking out Webvan.
Yeah.
Rest in peace.
Well, now they're talking about the story that we reported earlier. They'll deliver it right to your trunk. So. Okay.
That'll be interesting. That would be so interesting the first time to go out to your car and open the trunk and be like, oh, there's food in here. Microsoft likes the new Samsung Galaxy S8. I don't know.
Wait a minute. I think you're gonna be in the car and they're not gonna do it like.
They should. Dang it, they should. I was just so excited to move on to the next story. I don't know what I was thinking.
It's going to teleport into your trunk.
No, you'll give them the keys to your car.
Oh, okay.
Because we trust Amazon with everything in this weird future that's in my brain and nowhere else. Microsoft likes the new Samsung Galaxy S8 so much it's partnering with Samsung to release special versions of the phone called the Samsung Galaxy S8 Microsoft Edition. Upon first Wi-Fi connection, those phones will automatically download Microsoft's suite of Android apps, and once automatically installed, those apps will be placed strategically on the home screen. Other Microsoft-owned properties like LinkedIn and Wunderlist, or is it Wunderlist, will also be installed on the device, and I just don't know why this exists.
I think they should be delivered to your trunk. All those office apps should be delivered right to your trunk, right from the cloud.
Yeah, they should just install those apps into my trunk.
So Mary Jo Foley said that according to the email she got, you have to buy it in a store. You have to buy
the
it
Microsoft store.
And it has to connect in the store. So as soon as you connect to the Microsoft store Wi-Fi, that's how they automatically deliver them to your phone.
So it's just I guess I understand. Microsoft has a growing presence on Android. If they're going to bring the S8 into their stores, it would make sense that they'd, have a way to put all their stuff on the phone. I don't know. When I read through it, though, it just kind of sounds silly. But I guess if they're selling it in their stores, it makes sense. It does sound, though, that it's like maybe you don't want all that stuff. I don't know. Like it's very easy for me to go and install that stuff. It really does not take that long. But I suppose it's an extra feature for the Microsoft fan in your life.
Yeah,
that is.
It seems to me like another nail in the Windows Mobile coffin. I mean, there's like 1,000 nails in it at this point. Like it's nails all over the place in that coffin. But it's just another thing saying like, hey, like Android users, we want you. We know you're not ever going to buy a Windows Mobile phone.
But we have this other thing, and we'll put all our stuff on it for you. Mm-hmm. You don't even have to do it. Pre-orders now. You can pre-order that now, as you can all of the S8 devices, and pick it up on April 21st if this appeals to you.
Well, we are nearing April Fool's Day, and for tech journalists, this means wading through the stories to weed out what's true and what is an elaborate and maybe usually not so funny hoax. But lately, it seems we've been doing that a lot more often than once a year. Call it fake news, demonstrably inaccurate information, or propaganda. We've invited writer Patrick Tucker to talk about why it spreads so quickly. Patrick is a technology editor for Defense One and author of The Naked Future, What Happens in a World That Anticipates Your Every Move. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So you write that recent research into the roots of persuasion help explain why people are inclined to believe and then forward fake news. What can you tell us about that?
So you think of news as something that you absorb with your logical brain, and the logical brain is the part of your brain that sits at the very front. It's the portion of your brain that mammals evolved most recently. It's the prefrontal cortex. It's not actually true. It turns out we think about sharing news and digesting information and interpreting it as true. That's largely informed by the social areas of the brain that are sort of on the side. So it's pretty interesting work. The pioneer in this field is a guy named Matthew Lieberman. He's a PhD neuroscientist from UCLA, and he's been looking into this for a long time. But more and more research is validating his original hypothesis, which says that when we receive information, we first evaluate it using the social portions of our brain, and then after that, that informs the activity there, informs the prefrontal cortex. So it actually sort of changes our entire lens of truth. Now, we've sort of always had this. Of course, it predates news. It predates actually humanity. We evolved the prefrontal cortex over the course of millions of years. But the online environment is what's key here, because now entire groups of people can all of a sudden form a new sort of social sense of self and constantly find new, how you put this, like pluses and minuses, like they can achieve new points with a group almost immediately. It's a lot of social acceptance stimuli that you're sort of bombarded with, particularly when you're on Facebook, when you're on Twitter, when you're on any other social network, as a result of what you share and what you don't. And so that takes a process of social identification, puts the pedal to the metal and accelerates it. So this is something that a fellow researcher of his named Ian McCullough, he works at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and I met him. He's also an Army veteran, and he works a lot with the Department of Defense on some very sort of, I don't know, almost Dr. Strange-Levian sort of work. It's what he did is he took this research and he applied it to how effective social messaging was in the Middle East around innocuous campaigns related to anti-smoking. And he found that, yeah, the news that you believe is very much influenced by the social group you've elected to be a part of. And so what fake news does is it, and we're using this term rather objectively here. I'm not going to say like that the are fake news or they're not. But what it shows across cultures, and that's really how you get to the neurological sort of human roots of this. Across cultures, the news that most affects, that lights up those social portions of your brain, that's the stuff that you're most likely to share, regardless of whether or not it's true. So you can actually predict, if you're hooking somebody up to an fMRI, the news they're most likely to share, not on the basis of whether or not it's true, but on the basis of whether or not they think their friends are going to think it's true.
That's fascinating. This whole read was like such a fresh take on this topic that we've been reading about and discussing on this show so much in the past. So I love all of this kind of science behind it. You talk about the social part of our brain turning us into information DJs. How exactly does that affect our ability to rationalize whether something is so obviously fake? Because, somebody else can read it and be like, oh yeah, please, come on. But yet, it's still adopted and shared as real when in fact it seems to many to be obviously not.
Right. Well, in many ways, we developed this sense of what is rationally true and what is not clearly true. Because we kind of thought we were supposed to what we were getting from our social network. So by information DJs, what this means is that we use the social brain to create a filter that says this news is probably good for the crowd that we're going to be sending it to, for the people we're going to be sharing it with, because we understand now that speaking about news is very much a function of absorbing it. And that's not necessarily true back when we think of news as invented, when people were passively reading newspapers or even passively absorbing cable news broadcasts or things like that. Sharing it wasn't a function of it. Now that sharing has become a key function of why we actually consume news, then a lot of that social attention is queued up to really high levels because you're thinking about what news is going to appeal to the people that you share it with. So you become as much a broadcaster as anyone else. And that really sort of amplifies that. But the weirdest part was that depending on who you've aligned with sort of socially or how your social frame is working, when somebody confronts you with news that you in your social brain has determined is going to anger your social group, you become not just resistant to it, but almost twice as resistant to it as you would be to news you're receiving objectively. And that's what the fake news phenomenon really is about, because it's not just news that we can easily disregard as fake. It's also this emerging almost impulse to disregard news that we don't like as clearly poorly sourced, as clearly part of a conspiracy, as clearly not something that that's super easy to denounce. And this is how you get a whole group of people. And again, the politics here don't really matter to this. This is a human phenomenon, a whole group of people who are suddenly confronted with information that they don't like and are immediately able to yell and find support for the call fake news, regardless of whether or not that's true, because they've sensed that's going to alienate the group that they're a part of.
So what you're saying is you used to think of people as gullible. You'll believe anything. But what you're saying is really you will believe the things that you think the people in your social group that you want to be in will believe.
Right. And it's almost like an impulse. It's almost like a reaction. You're much more likely to believe those things because you're much more likely to share them. You're much more likely to experience some benefit when you share them. And that helps the idea of acceptance. You're going to be much more easily persuaded on the basis of something that you can share with no cost, no social cost, that you could actually achieve a benefit from sharing. And so that just changes your entire view of reality. And it also, to reiterate, it's really not political in nature. Because I wrote this and I was sort of interested in what the comment section was going to tell me about this. And what it told me is that this is definitely real. And it's definitely post-political. It's definitely something that happens to both people that feel like they're just talking to that one group all the time. And your entire risk-reward sort of framework is based on the stimuli that those folks give you when you post things, when you share things, and when you talk about news.
Well, I think of it also as what I hear you saying is there's virtue signaling, right? Which is part of what we do online is we post things to show our virtues, to show, how, interesting things about us or something like that. Whereas sharing in the past used to be like your mom cutting out an article from the newspaper and putting it in an envelope and sending it to you, where it was like that's not what we're talking about. Like she's not, that's not the same thing. So I mean, is there anyone, like, do you think that there's anyone developing these systems, anyone like working at Facebook or Twitter that really has this in mind? Or are they using it? Do you believe that they're really using it for their own benefit?
Well, so we know a couple of things. A moment ago, I talked about Dr. Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, who first came up with this idea. You should watch this TED Talk that's linked in the article. It's fascinating because at the end he says, as soon as I came up with this, I was contacted by the Russian government that wanted to pay me an almost ungodly amount of money to go over to Russia and figure out how to do this. So regardless of your politics, understanding this is something that's actually really key to the way troll propaganda works. And it is an aspect of like just geopolitical events now. It's something that we've all been living with, is the use of content that's been shifted or changed a little bit by trolls to spread like a particular point of view of news. So that's one group that's figured out, I guess, how to use this for their benefit, which is the Kremlin, which is Putin's Kremlin. It's also an aspect of U.S. military operations, actually. It's part of psychological operations. And we have a whole different set of laws and rules that govern the way we would conduct what's called psychological operations. But this is also an aspect of U.S. military-funded research, is this art of persuasion. And it's certainly an aspect of the business models of all of these social networks that we all subscribe to, but everyone's sort of approaching it from slightly different angles. So in terms of actually curing fake news as something that we can fix, there's a couple of efforts right now by Facebook through a nonprofit called First Draft. So they're reaching out to some folks that can basically correct things in your news feed that show up that are pretty clearly false. There's also a couple of bills in Congress that actually address fake news, that address sort of propaganda efforts by the Kremlin to influence U.S. public opinion, as well as German public opinion, as well as French. But fixing it is going to be harder than all of that, just because, like as we've said, this is an aspect of the brain that never was almost weaponized in the way that it is now, because we didn't have a constant barrage of news or the constant opportunity to share it, to gain social value, to gain cred with a certain circle. And so we're really in sort of entirely uncharted waters.
So we can learn to spot it in ourselves and then maybe not spread it. But in terms of stopping it, that's going to be harder.
If we're living in a social media world, maybe that's what we need, is a post-social media world. I don't know. Like, is there any solution? It doesn't sound like it.
Well, there's two books on this that I love. One, and I'll just say this very briefly. One was by David Weidengerber. It's from Harvard, and it's called Too Big to Know. And it really speaks to this idea of like, a subjective reality overpowering objective reality, and you have a personal responsibility to like not let that happen too much. And the other one, which is pretty derivative of that, which the audience might be more familiar with, is the filter bubble, which talks about when you go on Facebook, you start selecting what you see, you start selecting the groups that you like, you start pushing away the folks that you don't. Do that less. But it's a personal choice. It's not something that on a societal level we have an easy fix for.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for joining us. Patrick Tucker works for Defense One. He's the technology editor there, covers defense. Defense One as a whole covers defense and national security news. It's excellent if you're interested in that, and the technology section is great, as well as the other sections. You can find it at defense1.com. Thanks so much for coming on, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Take
Absolutely.
care.
Bye-bye. Fascinating stuff. All right, feedback time. Corey Lauer writes, after yesterday's episode talking about ISPs selling information without our consent, you mentioned using a VPN to mask your internet browsing. A person then has to trust the VPN provider, but I went around that problem and made my own VPN server out of a Raspberry Pi, so I definitely trust my VPN provider. Not a solution for the less tech savvy, but for anyone with decent Linux knowledge, there are good walkthroughs on setting up your own VPN server on the Pi and on the Raspberry Pi. I did some searching, and I found a bunch of them. I just put a single link in here as just an example. But Brian, you guys on know how you're queuing up to do some shows on this specifically, right?
Yeah, so me and Padre have been kind of doing a Network 101 series the last few weeks, and we've been building up to this, but considering current events, we're probably going to move some of these projects up and talk about VPNs and rolling your own. And I've been interested in doing the Raspberry Pi VPN thing for a while. I think Onion Pi was one of the ones I was looking at, and that's like the Tor network stuff. So yeah, stay tuned because we're going to be doing some of those projects soon.
Awesome. So definitely check that out. twit.tv/KH. I think possibly, I mean, even Padre was saying possibly sometime in April doing those shows, so you won't have to wait very long for that.
TNT's fan of the day is Corey Maisalika on Twitter, who sent us this photo saying, I hit play and then I turned to my workbench to fix ballasts and other such things.
Nice. That's
awesome.
That's an intense setup right there.
Yeah.
I don't even know what I'm looking at, but I like it.
But he's listening. It's good to listen. Don't touch all those tools and be watching something else.
Yeah, right. If you watch the screen on the side, you might hurt yourself just a little bit.
Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Record a video, take a picture of yourself or your setup, post it to Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it.
So Coldark in the TNT subreddit sent this story to the subreddit, and I want to thank Coldark first and foremost for that because I had missed it, about how a Minnesota State Senate held a vote yesterday, apparently, intended to protect Minnesotans from, so is it Minnesotans or we?
It's Minnesotaians.
Minnesotaians? Okay,
Yeah.
I'll go with that. From the effects of the repeal of the broadband consumer privacy rules that we've been talking about all week. The rule was amended to an economic development budget bill, and though Republicans have a single seat majority in Minnesota, one Republican senator, Warren Leamer, crossed party lines, voting in favor of the amendment, had a strong viewpoint on it, which took it to the Senate for a vote. It successfully added to the bill, passed 66-1. The full bill then passed 58-9. So state legislature for the win. I hadn't even considered this aspect about potentially, and obviously not all states could see this happen depending on how the legislation is filled. But hey, states could step in and potentially help their local constituents.
This is great news because I had honestly it was one of those things that I was like, oh, we can't do anything now because I mean, part of overturning the bill also said they can't create another bill similar to this. So, I got my email from the EFF. It's like, we need you more than ever. And I was like, well, to do what? Like we signed all the petitions. What can we do now? And it's like, it's great to hear that, of course, this could be something that is on the state level, controlled on the state level. And so, yeah, thanks to Minnesota and all the Minnesotaians.
And hopefully, yes, whatever they call themselves. iWeb in chat says Minnesotans.
Minnesotans.
Minnesotanians. There we go. We're getting closer with every try. But this is probably a good time to mention you were there when I was doing this last night. Last night when I got back in the studio, I was like, all right, I'm going to follow this Popular Mechanics article that we talked about, go into my ISP's site and, opt out of these things because there was a little walkthrough on that. And I was able to opt out on some. So they were buried, but I was able to kind of find a few with Comcast. And then I got to this point to where it was about third-party ads and how they had to be done on an individual level. And it pulled up this little helper window for me to do this, air quotes, easily. Meanwhile, there are probably like 60 different places within there that I would have to individually opt out of. There's a select all button. So I'm like, okay, I'll do select all and just do it all in one fell swoop. I'd say about 90% of those you have to do you can't do it through the automatic method. You have to go to their site individually and each one piece by piece go in through their setup and opt out. Now I understand you have to work for this stuff, and they make it hard for you to do this. But in one case, I went through to a site. What was it? Axiom?
Axiom, yeah.
Axiom. And I went there and I found the opt-out place and I clicked it and it took me to this other site, which is where they said, this is where you actually opt out. And then on that page, down at the bottom, it said opt-out information. All right, if you are truly, you've truly decided that you want to opt out of this, then go ahead and click here. That took me to the same page on the Axiom. It was like a loop. There was no way to actually opt out. I ended up ultimately Googling it and found the page to do it there. But just goes to show how difficult this stuff is. And it's done on purpose because, hey, your data, your information is super valuable. So there you go. I don't know. It was just depressing. I was like, I'm going to take it in my own hands and defeat it.
Yeah, who's going to spend that time besides you? Nobody. Well, you could just do it for the rest of us too.
But my doing it isn't going to help you. And what's even worse about this is, like, in some cases you can opt out and, it ties it to, let's say, your information. So anytime your information comes up, while you're out browsing or whatever, and your information comes up in an ad network, it would reject it based on, let's say, your email address, or they would clear your address out of their database. But in many cases, what it is they're placing a cookie on your device that says to reject any of those requests. So guess what? You've got to do this on any machine that you use, all of them. So go through all 60 of those things, do the opt-out process on all of them so that cookie gets placed on each of those computers. Hope that you never update your computer, because if you update your computer, the cookie goes away, and then, hey, you're back on track again, literally getting tracked. Oh, man. What a confusing world we live in. Sorry, that was my soapbox. TNT, I'll step off now. There, I stepped off. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 2300 UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv. Leave us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW, and find us on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV.
Hey, subscribe to our show if you haven't already. You can find all the ways at twit.tv/TNT. And if you want to tweet at me, I am at Megan Maroney.
And I'm at Jason Howell. Thanks to our technical director, Brian. He's our technical director, and so much more. Also, thanks to Burke, who is helping out in the studio, scrolling words on the screen, occasionally putting up words. Just pick a card at random.
Let's see your cards.
Pick a card at random, Burke.
Let's see.
Burke chat at random tells us
there was social currency.
There was something. Suitors. What?
Minnesoters.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. You don't want to get that wrong.
I would have tried that live, and I would have failed miserably, much like I just did. So. Anyways, thank you, Burke. I love that. And thanks to Kevin for editing the show. And thanks to you, of course, for talking tech with us today. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.